He drives the same car he's had for 9 years. He rotates through the same 5 shirts. He orders the cheapest thing on the menu without even checking the price because he knows he could order anything. His net worth is well into 7 figures. His cousin doesn't know. His best friend doesn't know. His own parents don't know. Why would anyone hide that? Because he's already seen what happens when people find out. You'd think the obvious move, once you finally have money, is to let people see it, to finally relax. But almost everyone who's actually built wealth quietly will tell you the opposite happened. The moment people find out, something in the relationship shifts, sometimes instantly, sometimes months later in a conversation that starts with, "Hey, can I ask you something?" Today, we're going through exactly who you should never tell when you build wealth quietly, not out of paranoia, mock, but because there's real research behind what happens when you do. And by the end, we're going to land on one name you probably didn't expect to be on this list. Before we keep going, if you're in that phase of quietly building wealth without making noise about it, this is exactly the kind of content this channel covers every week. Subscribe, because this list goes from the obvious to the dangerous. Position 6. Distant family. The cousin you see twice a year. The uncle who asks for money just until the end of the month. According to a Bankrate survey, almost 7 in 10 American adults have lent money to friends or family, and almost half of those who did had something bad happen as a result. That's not the exception. That's the baseline. Here's what changes the moment distant family finds out you're doing well. The request stops being, "Can you help me?" and starts being, "You can afford this." Those are two completely different conversations. The first one respects your decision either way. The second one assumes the answer is yes before you've even responded, and treats hesitation as a character flaw instead of a boundary. You might be thinking, "I'd help them out anyway, even if they didn't know I was rich." Maybe. But the size of the ask changes once someone believes you can solve the problem without feeling it. A $200 favor turns into a $5,000 favor, not because the need changed, but because the perceived ceiling did. Position 5. Close friends. This one's the most counterintuitive. It's not distant family that does the most damage to relationships. Among people who actually lend money to someone they're close to, almost half report something bad happening as a direct result. And here's the cruelest detail. The generations reporting the most fallout from lending are the ones with the closest, most recent friendships, because it's easier to ask and harder to say no. Think about why that makes sense once you say it out loud. A distant cousin has to work up the nerve to ask you for money. A close friend doesn't have to work up anything. The closeness itself is the permission. And when you say no to a close friend, it doesn't just end the request. It can end the friendship. Because now the friend has to explain to themselves why someone who has the money wouldn't help. Wealth changes the physics of friendship. Not because money corrupts, because expectation shifts. Position 4. Coworkers. Here the risk isn't a loan request. It's comparison. Research in economic psychology consistently shows that having coworkers or neighbors with higher income is linked to lower subjective well-being for the person comparing. And the effect gets stronger the closer that person is to you socially. It's not about them, it's about you. The moment a coworker knows you're in a different financial position, the dynamics of the group shift. Who asks for a raise, who celebrates what, and you complains about salary, who celebrates what, and you get pulled into all of it, whether you chose to or not. This isn't an abstract effect. Studies on income comparison among peers and neighbors find that subjective well-being responds to relative income, not just absolute income, meaning a coworker's sense of how they're doing financially can shift downward simply from knowing someone next to them is doing better, even if their own paycheck hasn't changed at all. You didn't take anything from them, but your presence in the comparison is enough to register as a loss. You might be thinking, "But I'm not going to tell them to show off." You don't need to show off. One offhand comment is enough, and the information doesn't go back in the box. Once a coworker knows, every future conversation about raises, bonuses, or who deserves what now has you sitting in it differently than before, and you'll likely never know exactly how, because nobody tells you that to your face. Position 3. The internet, social media, and finance forums love a wealth story. But publicly displaying net worth does two dangerous things at once. It makes you a target for scams, and it builds an audience that's going to judge your next purchase instead of your long-term plan. The scam part isn't theoretical. A large share of today's investment fraud, researchers tracking the pattern estimate around a third of cases, starts on platforms like Instagram and TikTok, often through fake profiles built specifically around the appearance of wealth, staged photos. Staged photos, proof of returns, lifestyle flexing, designed to make a stranger trust a stranger with their money. Regulators that track this kind of fraud explicitly warn that fraudulent profiles flaunt wealth as the bait, not the byproduct. The more convincingly you look rich online, the more attractive a target you become, not despite the way you present yourself, but because of it. Short line, real wealth is invisible. Performed wealth is loud. Position 2, a new romantic partner. We're not talking about a long-term spouse here. That person is a financial decision-making partner, part of the team. We're talking about a new relationship, one without history yet. The simple rule here, time reveals character before money reveals opportunity. Telling someone too early doesn't build connection. It builds a filter that quietly distorts every decision they make around you, even if they don't consciously realize it. And even once a relationship is established, money stays one of the most guarded subjects there is. A recent Bankrate survey found that about 4 in 10 Americans in a committed relationship admit to having kept some kind of financial secret from their partner. And more than 4 in 10 U.S. adults overall believe a financial secret is just as serious as physical infidelity. If money stays that hard to fully disclose even between people who've built a life together, it should tell you something about how much weight that information carries when there's no established trust yet at all. Position 1. Basically everyone, by default. Back to the number that opened this video. According to Bankrate, about 3 in 5 U.S. adults say they'd be uncomfortable talking about their bank account balance, even with close family. More uncomfortable than talking about religion or politics. Money is already the most avoided topic at the dinner table, even when nobody at the table is rich. Now imagine being the person holding the exact information everyone else is most curious about. Here's the turn. Everything on this list so far has been about protecting your wealth from other people. But the most dangerous person to tell isn't your cousin, your friend, or your coworker. It's you, the future version of you performing for yourself. There's a moment after the net worth grows where you start telling yourself a different story. I made it. I'm different now. And that's exactly the point where a lot of quietly rich people start getting loudly rich, not because of other people, but because their own identity demands a lifestyle upgrade to match the number on the account. Let's actually run the math with 2 versions of the same person. Both invest $300 a month, averaging an 8% annual return, close to the long-term historical average for U.S. markets. For the first 6 years, they're identical. Same contributions, same compounding, same discipline. After 6 years, both have a balance of about $27,792. Here's where they split. Person A keeps contributing $300 a month for the next 6 years untouched. Person B, now seeing a balance that finally looks like real money, decides they've earned a lifestyle upgrade, a nicer apartment, a better car lease, a few more dinners out, and quietly drops their monthly contribution down to $100 to make room for it. After 12 years total, Person A has contributed $43,200 and ends up with roughly $72,633. Person B has contributed only $28,800 and ends up with roughly $54,106. Same starting point. Same 6 years of identical discipline. The only difference is what happened after the balance started to feel like something worth celebrating. That single decision cost Person B more than $18,500, not because the market treated them differently, but because the engine got fed less fuel right when it was finally gaining speed. That's the real danger of telling your own identity you've made it. It's not really about Person A and Person B as separate people. It's the same person at 2 different forks in the same road. Here's the serious part. If at that point you decide to celebrate by upgrading your car, your house, your social circle, to show that you've arrived, you're not spending the money that grew. You're shutting off the engine that grew it. And now everyone knows. Quiet wealth was never about distrusting other people. It's about protecting the one asset that actually compounds time. Left alone without a loan request, without a comparison, without needing to perform for anyone, including yourself. Quick recap. Distant family asks and rarely pays back. Close friends get hurt by money more than you'd expect, not less. Coworkers shift the group dynamic without you noticing. The internet turns you into a target. A new relationship gets distorted by information shared too early. And almost everyone, by default, already finds this topic uncomfortable, even without knowing you have a reason to. But the most important name on this list is your own. The real work is not letting wealth rewrite the story you tell yourself about who you are. If you got rich today, quietly, who's the first person you'd actually tell, and why? Drop it in the comments.